everybody, and welcome to New Hampshire Theatre Project's 2020 Special Report. We always have a thank you celebration for our donors in July, and it's usually out in the garden. But this year, thanks to COVID-19, we haven't been able to do that. And so we decided that we would put together this special report for all of you to tell you what we've been doing this past year and what our hopes and dreams are for the future. So enjoy, and I hope to see you all very soon back at New Hampshire Theatre Project.
Well, it's easy for me to pick my very favorite moment at NHTP because it was my very first moment at NHTP. And it is when I saw a little notice in the local paper, not long after I'd moved here from Boston, that there was a theater company that was going to be producing Jacques Brel, which is one of my favorite plays. So I found my way to NHTP and was totally enchanted by the production. But more important, in the back of the program, there was this little note about a Shakespeare workshop for adults that was going to be given a couple of months later. And I just went right home and I signed up for it. And that was about 11 years ago now, and 11 or 12, and it's been nonstop ever since. And every moment has been wonderful, but that's my very favorite.
So I'd have to say that my favorite moment with NHTP is a little bit more recent, but it was the moment when I truly felt like I found my people. I was sitting in the audience. Jen knows a little bit of this. I had agreed to go see Robin Hood with a big group of my friends from Boston, and I purchased the ticket for the wrong day. So I showed up on Friday by myself. And I realized that they had all purchased their tickets for Saturday, but that was okay. I sat in the audience. I ended up finding one person that I knew a little bit, so I had one team member to sit with. But I made it through the whole show. I absolutely loved it. And at the very end, when the cast members started singing and the audience started clapping and singing along with them, I truly felt like I had found my people. I had never been part of an audience that was so welcome to participate in the show. Whether it was with singing, with clapping, with laughing, I had never seen that kind of theater, and I was so excited to be part of that and to have that experience. And it truly energized me, and I had this kind of fire to continue working with the theater and helping with the theater because I knew that it was the kind of people that I wanted to be around and the kind of theater that I wanted to participate in.
New Hampshire Theatre Project has very recently celebrated its 30th birthday, and over our celebrations during New Hampshire Gives, we were able to really look back at the foundings of the company to where we are now. That organisation has grown and changed, and in some ways strengthened, I think, over that time. What have we managed to do in the last year, in the last season, that's looked at the strength of the organisation?
It's kind of fun to do that, isn't it, instead of focusing on the current situation. Well, I think, 2 years ago, when we had the opportunity to become the primary tenants at 959 Islington Street, we had hopes of buying the building. And, we did a lot of work towards that, including having an appraisal and working out some details with the landlords. It's very complicated because it's not a separate unit. But in the process of that and working with a number of different consultants, we found that our organization just wasn't ready. We didn't have the infrastructure and the strength to mount a capital campaign. So that was our first goal, and we've been really working on that. I think building our team and strengthening our team. So I think at the time we had 7 board members, a couple of whom had been on for quite a number of years and were ready to move off. And we are now have 11 board members strong, including a lot of young and exciting new people with new vision and new ideas. And we strengthened the community advisors. Some of the old board members became advisors. A number of the folks who've been helping us with the Elephant in the Room series have become really dedicated community advisors. And I believe we have 12 now. And then thanks to you, Catherine, we've really strengthened the artist team and that commitment. So we have, what do we say, 24 resident and company artists. And these are artists who are dedicated to New Hampshire Theatre Project's mission to helping to grow the organization. And I think that team really became evident during the New Hampshire Gives campaign, because it was the first time that we had a whole team all working together. And in the past, when we've done those kinds of campaigns, we've raised $1,000 or something, but we raised $11,000 so easily. And it was because of that enormous commitment from everyone else, from so many different people. So, so that is very exciting. And I think now, and in that process, we've also worked on updating all our bylaws, strengthening our infrastructure in the organization, defining job responsibilities. Some of you may have noticed that for 30 years, I was the artistic director. And I finally said, okay, what I really am is the executive director, and Catherine is the artistic director, and really defining those. That's not necessarily how we're going to go in the future, right? We've talked about some different possibilities for governance.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we think about kind of, you know, I think what we realize, particularly with the addition of the company and resident artists and how that grew and how the board grew and our advisors have grown, that it really is the people at the center of our organization. Not only do we think that's the best way for a nonprofit to thrive and survive, but also that's how we make theatre. It's with people and bodies in a room, and sadly we can't do that at the moment, but we knew that, or what we're seeing, I think, even in the moment when we can't be in the room, the people are still carrying the energy of the organization. And so in that very, you know, collaborative way, thinking about what the future structure is for the organization in terms of leadership and governance, again goes back to people and people deliberating and in dialogue and in collaboration. So I often like to think about it as if what we do in the rehearsal room, what we do during our main stage, what we do during Elephant in the Room translates to the office. It translates to the administrative meeting. And the success and the skills that we grow and develop and that become unique to New Hampshire Theatre Project, the practices and the processes of us working in the rehearsal room can actually really strengthen the organization's administrative side as well. And so as we look at that, that maybe means, okay, so are we in a non-hierarchical structure of leadership? Are we in a collaborative model, a horizontal model?
Circular.
Or circular, yeah, because that actually fits who we are. And then that also gets to the points of access, accessibility, equity, participation, because we know that the best ideas, the new ideas, can come from anybody in the room when we're in a rehearsal room. So maybe that's also true when we're in a board meeting.
Well, I think it's really exciting that nonprofits were already geared to do this, and COVID-19 has pushed us over the edge of reinventing themselves, because the nonprofit model with the board structure as well as staff structure with an executive director, it's kind of like someone once described it as an hourglass. So you have the board at the top and the executive director is that tiny little narrow part in the middle, and then everyone else is on the bottom. And that structure just doesn't work anymore. So even some of the larger funders are really looking at this. I know you've been taking a lot of workshops, and I remember in the 80s reading Rebuilding the Front Porch of America by Patrick Overton, and he was saying this. He said community nonprofits have to change their governance structure in order to survive. That was almost, well, it was probably in the late 80s, so 20 plus years ago. And now we're finally catching up to that. It's very exciting. It's what I always wanted to do with the organization. And you know, it's not, I know a few folks who've been with us for all these years as donors and patrons, and they say, well, Jen, how will this organization survive without you? And I feel excited that there's so many people that are dedicated to the mission, and building that collaborative structure is exciting for me to help and be a part of it and help, you know,
Exactly.
I'm sharing in it too. And then I will, when I'm ready, be able to step out, stay involved in some way, but pass it on.
And that's it, that if it was that hourglass structure, and what we were saying was, well, the new ED or the new executive artistic director is coming in, and then that means Jen, the founder, leaves. We see that in so many organizations, and that is often the moment where the organization fails, or at least flounders for a long time,
Right.
because you lose the continuity, you lose the connection, and in some ways you lose, particularly if it's a founder like yourself, you lose the heart of the organization. You lose the philosophy that comes to it, you know. So what we're doing is saying, no, the philosophy of our work is crucial, is central. It's not, it's nice that this person knows how our database works, or who this donor is, but actually what's most important to me in thinking about this model is that, yes, there should always be a seat at the table for you, as there should be for other artists and individuals who have crossed with the organization. Because again, if that door is open, then we're always open to the knowledge that that person has, to the experience, to the perspective. New voices shape and change. But again, if everybody is there with that same understanding that I'm not the only person making the decision, then we all kind of grow and get better, and then hopefully serve our audience, serve our benefactors, serve our stakeholders better.
Yeah, I remember there was a moment at the last board meeting where some issue came up, and I found myself feeling very stressed about this. And then I said, wait, I don't have to make that decision. The group will make that decision. And it was just like this burden had been lifted from my shoulders. It was a great moment. I just wanted to give a shout out to Janice Hastings, our marketing director, and Tamara Steinhau, our administrative assistant, because the four of us have been really working collaboratively as a staff in the same way that we're talking about, you know, these other groups. And that has meant all of us changing our jobs, shifting responsibilities, giving up some things, letting go, which is not easy, but it's an extraordinary process. It's been a great journey.
Absolutely. It's felt very much like we're not building this beautiful palace and then we'll go live in it and realize that the plumbing doesn't work. We're kind of we're building it and going as we go. And again, that's tricky. That's tricky because something isn't quite fitting right, or something isn't quite working, or something isn't quite to hand. But so it feels uncomfortable. But I think what we've managed to do as a staff with Janice and with Tamara, working with us collaboratively, is be honest about this. This is starting to feel, this isn't quite right, and everybody kind of knows, and we're able to say that. We might not have the answer straight away, but we can at least have the conversation that gets us to. We can at least say, well, that would be something for the advisory committee. Oh, maybe the board could help us here. Or actually, you know what? I bet the artists would have great ideas. And I think about the strategic planning session we had in May 20th with 35 of our board members, community members, resident and company artists, and the staff. And that was a session, obviously, in the middle of an incredibly challenging time, and in the middle of this transition time that was existing for the organisation anyway. And we were able to come together to look at our impact, our space, and the programs that we do. And it was a virtual table, it was here on Zoom, but everybody was able to share their opinion, share their perspectives. We saw where the common ground was. We knew what was important with the organisation. And that kind of thing makes me really excited for the future because there's so much power in that number of people.
And it created such a ground plan to move forward. I mean, one of the biggest issues at that time was, should we try to hold on to our space? Because, you know, we are paying rent and utilities on a space that's essentially sitting empty at the moment. Yeah. And what came out of that meeting and future discussions with patrons and donors was that the space, our space at 959 Islington Street, is tremendously important. What people love is the intimacy of it and the safety of it. Because it's small and intimate, we're able to tackle, you know, challenging topics in the main stage productions, the elephant in the room, the community connectors, and still hold the space and keep it safe for these kinds of community conversations. So as a result of that, you know, we have, we're moving forward with our plans to hold on to the space as long as we can, either through a long-term lease or hopefully maybe purchasing it. And so those meetings are so important to creating a blueprint for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think, you know, if we've looked back at needing to strengthen the organization to be in a position to take a step forward with our own home, it really seems like 2019-2020 season, you know, our theme was, can one person make a difference? What it actually sounds like is the organization, together with many people, has actually made a huge difference to that particular goal of actually securing that space as an important place in Portsmouth and in the state that is open for community dialogue around challenging issues. And that seems as more important now than it ever did.
I came from experience of community acting for many years, and I came into this area and had gone for a few years without getting involved in acting, and I saw an ad for a workshop, and I did that workshop. I think Jen was running it, and I asked Jen about any upcoming things that I could try out for, and the next thing I knew, I was cast in The Crucible, and I just had the most wonderful time with this great group of actors and such talent and such directing in such a small space and such creativity that I haven't seen in all the plays that I've been in. And it was a tremendous experience, and it made me want to get more and more involved. And I was lucky to be able to do that.
My favorite memory is also one of my first. It was actually when as I recall, when I was asked if I was interested in joining the board. There was an event at the 100 Club, and I don't think I knew anything about the organization at the time, not much. And I arrived there, and of course, the 100 Club was pretty impressive, and there were a lot of people there, and there were some kids from Youth Rep there who were all in black, dressed in black. And I was speaking with one of them, and they were talking about how they were doing a Brecht play. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, where am I? What am I getting involved with a Brecht play? How is that possible? But that's what they were doing. And it sort of blew my mind, because I had a sort of a notion about what I thought this might be, and it was not that, and it has proved not to have been that at all from that point forward in all these 14 years or 13 years that I've been involved. That always stuck with me, that there were these young people who were doing this really sophisticated and difficult performance, and they did it beautifully. So that was really impressive, and it's just continued from there. I mean, it's been one after the other of those sorts of performances. So that it's been a long time, but that memory will never leave me.
I've been on a really long ride with New Hampshire Theatre Project. I was ferrying a daughter around to performances, rehearsals and performances for like 9 years, and thoroughly enjoying the quality and the engagement that those kids had with theater and with each other that continues today. But my first main stage show was Elephant Man. And I almost had to pinch myself throughout the performance to remind myself that I wasn't in New York or London, that I was in Portsmouth watching something that was just totally amazing to me. The quality and the whole experience and the intimacy of it. And that set me on the path of saying, I've got to expose other people to this, that I was alone at that performance. And I've never been alone at another one since, because I've been able to encourage and easily invite friends who clamor to come to shows because they trust what's going to happen at New Hampshire Theatre Project when they do. And what I value so much is the discussions, because all of them have lent themselves to discussing things afterwards. And in fact, now the decision is whether or not to come to shows that we can talk about them afterwards, or do we talk beforehand? And so it's a really important part of my own personal community because of what the theater provides.
Well, it's been quite a year, 2019 into 2020. I was in the position of Associate Artistic Director at the beginning of this season, working closely with Genevieve to think about all of our programming and to think about how we interact with our community, both within the organisation and outside. It's been so many challenges, but also so many joyous moments. When I look at what the 2019-2020 season had in it, I kind of get overwhelmed by the amount of work that we managed to produce with our staff of 4. And I know that it wouldn't be possible to do all the work that we do without our resident and company artists, our community advisors, our board members, as well as all of the partner organisations that we work with across many of our programmes. Our 2019-2020 season theme was, can one person make a difference? So I'm thinking about, what difference did we make in that year? If we look at our main stage productions, the productions that happen in our 50-seat black box theatre in Portsmouth's West End, we started the year strong. We had Eleanor Burgess's wonderful production of The Niceties. I was very fortunate to be able to direct that work and work alongside Malika McHerron-Cobb and Genevieve in a piece that tackled questions about what it means to represent the true history in this country. As we look at where we are now and the conversations that are happening all across this country, I'm proud that New Hampshire Theatre Project started its season in October of 2019 with a student of colour asking their white professor, where is my history? Where is it in the curriculum? What power do you have? And how do we move together for a better future? That production was able to tour sites around New Hampshire in February of 2020 of this year. It's really quite amazing to think that that was only just a few months ago. Over 1,000 individuals saw that production, both in our space and then at the sites that we toured that production around the state. New Hampshire Theatre Project has a proud history of touring around the state of New Hampshire, and I'm really delighted that we were able to do that with our main stage production. After The Niceties, we travelled back in time with Jane Austen's work, Pride and Prejudice. Kate Hamill's play was fun and it invited a lot of new individuals to our audience. So I'm really thinking about, who do we serve? Who always comes to our theatre? You there, sitting there, who've been donating and supporting us. And how do we keep that door open so that everyone knows the theatre is for them? Then we moved into a reprise of It's a Wonderful Life. It was a fun holiday show that brought back our cast from last year. It was a delight to have them in our theatre over the holiday season, and again opened up the theatre to families. We'll be thinking a lot about how our programming reflects all ages as we move into our next season. Then in January, directed by Blair Huntermark, resident company artist, we had Sherwood, The Adventures of Robin Hood. What a delight it was to have that cast in our theatre. One of my highlights from that moment was a set of grandparents had brought their young grandson to the theatre, and he'd sat enthralled in the front row, because you can really be that close to our actors and performers in our space. The grandmother asked if the cast would be willing to have a photograph taken with their grandson. I ran backstage to find out, to see some of the cast in various states of undress, getting ready to return home to their families. And without a doubt, with no questions asked, each one of those cast members donned their costumes again and entered the stages as their character. And we gave that young audience member another few moments of magic. That's what we do. That's the work that we do. In March, we moved into our 4th annual storytelling festival, headlined by Diane Edgecombe. We had important conversations about who gets to tell their stories and how we can be stewards of all stories. I'm particularly proud of the conversation led by Anne Jennison, an Indigenous storyteller, helping guide us at New Hampshire Theatre Project and other artists around the state in conversations around what we do, what we can do as stewards of this land, as stewards of theatrical heritage that go back many, many centuries. It's important to have conversations like that in our space. It was challenging to have to pause the festival partway through as news of COVID-19 spread. But together as a team, as a board, as advisory members and as artists, we came together to discuss what we needed to do. No artistic director wants to be part of making a decision to cancel the end of their season, particularly one that in some ways was my first season, having taken the full job of artistic director in January of this year. But it was the right thing to do. So we were unable to stage our new work, Anthropocene, important conversation about how we steward the planet around us. I really hope to be able to return to that work in seasons to come. We were also sadly charged with cancelling company artist Eric Shulga's first directing debut for us in Goodnight Desdemona, Good Morning Juliet. We would have welcomed Mary Langley back to our stage, as well as many artists that we love working with. We're working with the rights company of Goodnight Desdemona in order to bring that play to you in some format in the coming months. Look out for that. It is important for us to be out in the community making work with, for, and by our community. Our artist in residence programs are a strong part of what we do, and I thank all of the teaching artists that have dedicated their work to bringing theatre across the state. We've also had our on-site education this year in terms of classes and theatre making opportunities. We've worked with organisations such as Future in Sight for individuals with visual impairments, the Green Guard Centre for Autism, and Arts in Reach to bring theatre to their communities as well. You might also hear a recent PSA developed by Seacoast Outright and Big Brothers Big Sisters of New Hampshire. We were part in helping them gather their stories and produce that work. Thank you to CJ Lewis and Stephanie Lazenby for all the work they've done with that organisation. This year we've also had many adult programmes, in particular our Couch to Mic series run by Stephanie Lazenby. These are brave new performers exploring what comedy can do. We've tackled topics as hard-hitting as our Elephant in the Room series, but through the means of stand-up comedy. More of that to come soon. And finally, to our Elephant in the Room series. We chose this year to take a pause on producing new works in that series in order to look at what this 3-year-old program really does and is doing for the community. We have, however, been touring that work around the state, and so continued to take these important play readings all over. We are working with a variety of organisations to look at new topics for that work, but also different and innovative ways to have that programme embed in other organisations. And we look forward to continuing our partnerships with Seacoast Mental Health, as well as other mental health organisations around the state. Now more than ever, we have to uncover those elephants in the room. We have to say we can hold space for challenging conversations, and we can do that through the art of theatre. I think it's safe to say that the 2019-2020 season was a success. It had its challenges, but when looking back over it, we made a difference. And I can't wait to see what we do next.
I am new to the board, and I must say that in some ways I've been looking for a theater company like this one for a very long time. And so I'm glad to have found it. What is unique for me about New Hampshire Theatre Project is the way in which it engages the audience, engages with difficult material, and creates community to be able to do that. And my favorite moment, I think, is Elephant in the Room. I'm a psychologist, and I was serving on the panel for the conversation about suicide and suicide risk. And there was a reading, the play reading was very tender and very moving, and it created an experience of empathy with people who go through suicide and suicide risk and the consequences of suicide in a way that you can't do in any other way. It's not like reading about it in a newspaper. And so I could experience what theater can actually be like. And I was just so grateful for having found a place that does what New Hampshire Theatre Project does.
For me, my favorite moment was definitely the first time I experienced New Hampshire Theatre Project. A friend of mine who is an addictions counselor was on the panel for the Elephant in the Room, and I didn't really know what to expect. I'm not a person who goes to the theater that often. I've been to the Nutcracker in Boston, and I showed up to this little tiny theater in my neighborhood, and I went there to see my friend, participate in this panel, but I was completely blown away by it. I was moved, I cried, I looked around me, and everyone else was experiencing the same thing, and I just had this sense of, not just community, but communion with that community. It was very special, and ever since I had that experience, I've been not only on the board but totally on board with the theater, and I've gone to some main stage productions, other events, and have just really felt a sense of belonging there.
When Jen asked me to be on the board, I was kind of a little bit, okay, well, I'm coming from the business world and not in the theater world at all. How is this going to work? And I was very pleased to be asked. And when I did become a member of the board, in the way people were accepting and able to get part of the group, which was very quickly. But one of the things that I did do was go to a workshop run by C.J. Lewis and run by a workshop, and it was on speaking, and public speaking or speaking. And there was actors there was an individual that read for ebooks, and there I am, I barely speak, but I'll tell you, that was one of the best workshops that I'd ever been, because it kind of drew me out a little bit, and it helped me to speak to people more. I'm very quiet. I tend to be quiet, and that worked out very well, and I really appreciate that. So I think the workshops that the theater does, fantastic, and you know, we could do more, hopefully.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Executive Director's Financial Update. As I'm sure you know, 2 years ago in 2018, New Hampshire Theatre Project became the primary tenants here at 959 Islington Street. This was a fantastic opportunity, but it was economically difficult because with very little notice, we suddenly doubled our monthly expenses. We had to pay all of the rent and all the utilities. Programming takes about 6 months to a year to catch up. And so that first year we lost about $12,000. Last year in 2018-19, as our programming began to fill out, we cut that loss in half. And this year for 2019-20, we were on track to not only break even, but probably be in the black. Things were going really well until March. When COVID-19 hit and we had to close the theater, we canceled half of the Storytelling Festival programs. We canceled our last 2 main stage productions, Anthropocene and Goodnight Desdemona, Good Morning Juliet. We had to cancel our 3 summer productions, which were going to feature New Hampshire playwrights. We canceled all our summer theater camps, all our artists in residence programs, and 3 Elephant in the Room programs, one with Seacoast Mental Health Center, one with the Network for Health in Manchester, and Monadnock Family Services in Keene. Sadly, the over 70 artists who would have been involved in all those projects were no longer able to work here. However, we have been very fortunate. We did receive a payroll protection grant, hopefully grant, it's officially a loan, but we're sure it will turn into a grant. And that enabled us to keep our core staff on. We received a $10,000 CARES grant from the Federal CARES Act through the New Hampshire Humanities. And the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation gave us an operating grant that we weren't due to get until December, but they sent it to us in March. And then, of course, we have all of you to thank. Since March, we have raised over $20,000 in unsolicited donations that is simply coming from all of you pitching in. And we are so honored and grateful in this show of appreciation and your belief and confidence that New Hampshire Theatre Project is important to you and to your community. And then for New Hampshire Gives, we hope to raise $10,000 for We Don't Know What This Is Yet, which is an applied theater piece we are working on. And we raised $11,000. So again, we are deeply humbled and incredibly grateful. We're closed through the summer, but we have been able to keep all of our staff on, our regular staff. We're paying the bills, paying the rent. Our electricity bill is pretty low, no theater lights, no air conditioning. And with the solar panels, we're actually getting some credits with Eversource. We have applied for another grant, a CARES grant through the state. That will help pay for an upgrade to our HVAC system, hiring new cleaning staff, and getting equipment so that we can live stream, cameras, etc. Because we envision the future will be some combination of live performances for very small groups of people and the virtual world. We've also applied for an arts and healthcare grant, which will help us re-envision the Elephant in the Room program for the virtual world. So here we are. We don't know what the future will look like, the economy, or when people will feel comfortable coming back into the theater. It feels very odd to be all alone in this beautiful space. But the laughter and the tears and the applause, it's all still here. It's echoing. So we don't know what the future is, but we're here, we're strong. We're in a good place financially, thanks to all of you. And we're working hard to plan for the future, whatever that looks like.
I think my favorite moment is what's exactly happening right now. It's just listening to all of these stories from everyone. They're heartfelt, and it shows how much NHTP has moved and changed so many lives. It's the depth of emotion that has been brought out in me and obviously in everyone, and I love that. and especially feeling so disconnected right now, feeling a part of this is very important to me. So it's just my hopes and dreams that I can always be a part of the emotion and the stories of NHTP.
I love all the magic that happens at NHTP, but in going through all the old files that I've been cleaning out recently, I ran across a program from a story theater class in 2008, which my daughter attended. So I saw her name on the program, and it was during the year that I homeschooled her, and I worked fewer hours at NHTP, but she would come along and spend the day in the office and do her homework, and then she would take this story theater class with Liz Crane. So that, I think, that's when NHTP became more than just a job. It was just a part of us.
Hey everybody, this is CJ Lewis. I'm the program director for We Don't Know What This Is Yet. And first of all, thank you all so much for your support of this project up to this point. We raised about $10,000 last month from people like you who want to see this work continue to move forward. And I'm excited to share that we are moving forward into our next phase in gathering more stories and experiences of people throughout the state of New Hampshire as they cope and adjust to not just what's happened with COVID-19, but all of the events socially and nationally that are happening in our world and in our country right now. And I'm excited to share the next phase of this process is to really widen our circle and invite more people into this work. So we're actually looking to find 10 or 12 correspondents to also train as interviewers and go and gather stories within our broader community, but also within their own individual communities as well. So we can hopefully really diversify the pool of voices that we're bearing witness to, and we're all really excited about it.
So setting the stage for 2020-21, a season that lays ahead of us. Usually by now I would be presenting a reveal to you of what we had to come. Sadly, that's not what I can do this year. But I can set the stage a little bit for what we're working on. We had fantastic support during New Hampshire Gives for our production. We don't know what this is yet. We're taking the current moment to gather stories, experiences to bear witness to the transformation that is happening in our region, in our state, and in our country, and within ourselves. We are not holding ourselves to an opening date or a specific run of that production, but we're saying, let's think innovatively about how and where and why we share those stories. We're meeting with our programming committee regularly now to think about what comes. A theatre typically plans a full year season with its productions, and you know your cast and your crew, you start to bring together your sponsors. Right now, with all the uncertainty, with balancing guidelines and our values, we're taking a little bit extra time. And thank you. The support that you give us allows us to take that time. Not every organisation in the state is as fortunate as we are. We talk a lot about fortifying. You've heard it tonight. That's what we're doing. We're thinking about the systems we use and are they the right systems for the moment. This organisation is changing and growing, and it's exciting to be doing this work. So what will we be seeing? Will we be looking at it on a screen? Will you be back in our theatre? Maybe a little bit of both. But what I do know, whether you are a third grade student, whether you're a college student, whether you're an individual isolated at home, or you're gathering up a group of friends and coming back to our theatre, all of those are moments for theatre. We need it as a community. We need to be able to understand what we're experiencing, where we've been and where we're going. We need new worlds opened up to us, new perspectives. We need a light shone in our blind spots, and we need an opportunity to amplify our voices. Through our main stage productions, our artist in residence programs, educational opportunities, and Elephant in the Room series. We will be continuing to transform lives through the art of theatre. Here's to our new season.
We're going to use all of our creative power to innovate in creating theater that's going to be important and work well and be successful in the pandemic and post-pandemic era that we're living in.
My hope for NHTP going forward is that it continues to be a place where people are challenged and energized to do more and to be better, whether that's through community conversations or through performances. And I really hope it becomes a place in the state and in the region that communities turn to when they're facing difficult conversations or difficult issues within their communities. They can find people to help them navigate those topics.
And I'd like to see more programming that challenges preconceptions as it engenders, frank and honest conversations about difficult subjects. And I really love that the Elephant in the Room series moves in that direction. And almost everything you do there, even the funny stuff or the serious stuff, it's all worthwhile and wonderful to watch, and it stays with you for a long time. And I hope that continues.
I feel like what we're going through now is going to change things fundamentally for the organization and everybody who interacts with it. And I hope and I'm sure that that we will be able to adapt to that in really interesting and innovative ways. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
And I believe that my hope for the future is that we do continue. First of all, and we are able to have workshops. We can do the workshops virtually. We can do the performances and whatnot, which is going to be wonderful.
People miss it. Things have been interrupted in our lives and they want to go back to something. And I think they want to be included in this for all the reasons that people enjoy theater. So I'm really hoping that will happen, and I think it will. And I look forward to it. It's been a wonderful ride.
My hopes are that we continue to grow, to reach more people, and to continue to cultivate the quality and the comfort that we have at NHTP.
My hope for the future is that that we don't lose our way, that there is a sense in which we're all in this together. We're not necessarily all in the same boat, but we're all in the same storm. And for us to be different boats in the same storm and to recognize each other in the dark, recognize each other in the waves, and to be able to come together in the way that New Hampshire Theatre Project allows us to do is something that I really hope it can continue to do in the future.
And so my hope for the theater for the future is that, we can really retain that sense of belonging in the community. And it looks very different right now. We're all kind of virtual, we're zooming in, we're trying to do what we can to adapt. But I really hope that, at the end of this tunnel that we can all return to that and have that space of belonging again.